Hello everybody, Jake your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! There was a new patch in Unite and I want to give my take on what has changed in the meta with today's tier list. The Unison Strike tier list. It's Monday. On Mondays we do tier lists. It's Tuesday. On Wednesdays we wear pink.
Terry crushed it. It works!
I will start by saying not an insane amount has changed. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on the changes, as well as some Pokemon I may have under or overvalued in the last tier list I put out right here. So this will be our Unison Strike tier list. We have our God tier, Psyduck. I don't think the nerfs to Psyduck has really changed too much for this Pokemon. I'm going to set it into our S tier because one of our S tier Pokemon will make it to the God tier, and it definitely could be Psyduck again. We have Miraidon, who received no changes, and I still think Miraidon is amazing. It's possible it's closer to A tier, but I really just think having two super solid builds is great. You can play it as a mage, you can play it as more of a speedster. You have the ability to react to what your opponents are doing. Like if they have a lot of dive, you can play a specific build. If they have very little dive, you can play a specific build. It's really cool to have so much versatility in a Pokemon like that. Umbreon got nerfed, and I do not think my opinion has changed. Still one of the best things in the game. I don't think the changes really did much to it at all. Blissey got nerfed in the smallest way ever, and it also got buffed. A massive buff, in my opinion. Blissey is still insane, definitely deserving of the S tier, and I do think Eldegood hanging out in the S tier for a supporter is very, very fair. If you wanted to say Hoopa belongs in this tier as well, I couldn't really argue with you. Supports are insanely good in Unite. For our A+ tier, Darkrai. I actually think Darkrai is a bit overrated right now. Here's the problem, though. If there is a Darkrai on the enemy team and they recognize the one or two good players on the opposing team, they are a menace. That being said, its win rate has not been phenomenal. One of its builds, or kind of two of its builds, are absolute garbage. There's really only one decent build with this Pokemon. It doesn't secure objectives super well. However, if you do shut down the good player, this thing is pretty nuts. I think I'm going to move it to the A tier. I know what you're saying, but I really don't think this thing is that insanely good. However, it's so annoying that it is a top ban for me, and a player who's really good with it is super annoying and good. It's dumb and kind of broken in how dumb it is, but I don't think it's a game winner, so I don't really know. Yeah. Tree, I think Tree stays. Tinkaton. Tinkaton's weird because it's kind of like Darkrai, except its one build is a monstrous build. I think I'm going to leave Tink in A+, just because of Gigaton Hammer Thief. Gigaton Hammer Thief's amazing. Everything else going on in Tink's kit doesn't really live up to the rest of the roster. I hope they mess with some other stuff there. Tink, I think, is really, really good. It requires a lot of resources, though. Garchomp staying where it is. Mimikyu staying where it is. Incredible all-rounders. Zacian, I put it in A+ last week, and to be fair, it was probably closer to A, maybe even B+. But I didn't get to spend a ton of time with it after the nerfs, and now they gave it what I think is a really solid buff. So Zacian's buff is that your Intrepid Sword no longer requires 8, 12, 15 energy to power. It's 5, 8, and 10 now. That 5 breakpoint is unbelievably big. Unbelievably big. I think it's a great buff for it, and I think I was probably wrong to have it in A+ last time, and I think now pretty fair. Zarina, great, staying in A+. Blaziken, great, staying in A+. Dark Bear, great, staying in A+. All-rounders are awesome. These are all great ones. Leafeon's a weird one. I'm going to move Leafeon down to our A tier as well. Here's the thing. I think high-end Leafeon is one of the best Pokemon in the game. You just never see a high-end Leafeon player. Ever. So, and its win rate is never good because I do think skill issue with this, but at the same time, I got to be honest with what you see in 90% of your games, 95% of your games, and it's a pretty fine Leafeon. They're good, don't get me wrong, and it hitting level 4 and getting a move so fast is amazing, but only a few players really take advantage of it. I'm keeping Dodrio in A+. I think it's one of the best speedsters going in the game. Greedon. Greedon got a nerf, and I really don't think it destroyed Greedon. I don't. It's a 6% damage nerf on Belch. I'm sure there are some breakpoints with it that are significant, but you're already stacking on this Pokemon a lot of the time. You could maybe even run weakness on it to make up for that. Yeah. Greninja. I'm not moving Greninja at A+. I think Greninja is actually pretty slept on. Also, one of the lowest skill players in your games will be Greninja because it's one of the free Pokemon, and it looks so cool and is so cool. When you are popping off with Greninja, it's a real treat. Alola Ninetales got a little bit of a nerf. I'm going to move it down to B+, but I do think it's still really solid, and a lot of the attackers I have in the B+ tier are really solid. It's amazing in lane. You still do a lot of damage with it. I don't think this has destroyed it by any means, but you've nerfed both of its builds. So, yeah. Pikachu, staying in A, really good, powerful Pokemon. Inteleon, I think, is very fair in A. I'm going to move Mewtwo Y up into A+. I actually think Mewtwo Y, for the longest time, I think people just have been off this for a bit. With Blissey becoming so much more popular, basically being in every game, this makes Mewtwo Y even better. And there's also like a kind of a cool mage build that I've been seeing go around. I guess it was something that was popularized a bit in Japan, and I was watching Inder the other day on stream play it. I'll have to try it out. I think Mewtwo Y is just really, really good. Mew, very good. Right here with Leafeon, to be fair. Very good, but you need to be really good with it. Talon, super solid speedster. I think A is very fair. Zoroark, if I'm being honest, Zoroark is probably right there with Dodrio. It's just that no one's any good with it. However, that one demon Zoroark that you see will absolutely annihilate you because it's one of the highest skill, if not the highest skill Pokemon in the game. And with a little level lead and a lot of skill, this thing is an absolute monster. An absolute monster. It could be A+, but again, it's kind of right there with Leafeon for me. I more often see players who don't know how to play it, and if they don't get that level lead, it's over. Mamo, Snorlax, Blastoise, these are all really amazing defenders that I'm going to have in our A tier. Sure, maybe they're all A+. Right there with Trevenant. I can't really argue it. Just like supporters, their defenders are incredibly good. So if I were to move all of them up a tier, I wouldn't even think it's weird. If I move all my defenders up to A+, sure. Not having a defender, not having a supporter, completely game changing, and all of these are great. Dragonite. Yeah, Dragonite I'm a little up and down on. Sometimes I think it's broken, and then sometimes I think it's fine. I do think in a meta with so much crowd control, you just see so much Psyduck and things like that, so much Umbreon, and a Blissey safeguarding. I do think it hurts the Outrage build a little bit. I think Hyper Beam is also pretty good. I'm going to move Dragonite down one tier. I don't think it's bad at all. B+, these are all really solid Pokemon. I'm going to move it down with some other all-rounders in the B+ tier. Gyarados and Cerulege. Actually, I'm going to move Cerulege up to A+. I think the minor buffs they gave it a little while back were actually pretty good. It feels like Psycho Cut is extremely powerful right now. Gary, staying where it is. Gary's really, really good. It's a little slept on. I don't think you see it a ton, but it's a little slept on. Mime's great. Even though sometimes it feels like there are some other defender options that are really solid. I think Mime is like essentially a defender, really solid choice. Decidueye, pretty dang good, super punishable. A lot of these attackers are like this. I think Espeon is actually better than that. Espeon is going to move up to my A tier, as well as Glaceon. The EVs are great. Gardevoir, I'm not really moving Guard out of B+. The reasoning behind it is, even though it got a bit of a buff with a one level faster for its Evo, I think a lot of Pokemon are going to get this buff. I don't really think that changed much at all for Guard, because you're not changing any move break points. You're not changing your Unite move break point. So you get stats one level faster. It's still pretty bad in lane. You need to give it center. It can kind of be punished for that. So I'm going to leave it where it is. Delphox, I feel like, has the exact same situation going on. Kind of same with Candle. At least Candle is like really good at anti-stacking. Armarouge, I think, has been left behind a little bit, but also a little undervalued. I think B+ is a tier full of Pokemon that aren't played maybe as much as they could be, but they do pretty well. Gengar and Meowscarada right in that camp. They're both speedsters, so they carry pretty hard, as all speedsters seem to do, right? Absol, out of this group, I think Absol's probably the best out of this group. I think you could move it up to the A tier. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that here. It does feel like it fits in more in line with these speedsters to me than these speedsters, who are all good. These are all good. Zeraora is good. Scyther is good. Takes a lot of skill, but Scyther's pretty good. Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is a really interesting one. I have to move Ho-Oh down. I actually think they over-nerfed this thing. I'm moving it down to the B tier. It might even be C tier. You know what? I'm really curious. I want to look up its win rate right now. Come along with me, everybody, over to Unite API. This is not going to make my decision. I played like a few games of Ho-Oh the other day. I'm like, dang, this thing really feels like it fell off a bit, huh? It's got 150% win rate build. Fire Spin Sky Attack. Fly Flamethrower also at 50. Fly Sky Attack. This is a 3% pick rate, though, so you can't really look at that. And then Fire Spin Flamethrower at 49. Yeah, it feels like middle of the road to me. Yeah, I think they over-nerfed it. For being a cool legendary Pokemon, I actually think they probably over-nerfed this thing. Lapras, I'm going to keep B+. I think it's pretty solid. But I will move our defenders up. I'm going to move Slowbro up, Lapras up. I think that's very fair. I'm going to move them up to A. Having a defender is game-changing. These ones are great. Wiggly, I also might move Wiggly up. So Wiggly got a nerf buff, just like Blissey, right? It got a damage nerf, but it also got a really nice buff to its Unite move. And I think overall that's a positive change for Wiggly. I'm going to move it up. I could also move Mime up, I guess. The fact is, not having one of these Pokemon is, like, pretty rough. Let's see. Clefable, I could keep Clefable B+. The only issue with Clefable really is it can't play on its own. You know, it needs a team. But besides that, I think it's fine. Let's talk about some of our all-rounders here. Scizor is going to stay. Buzzwole feels like skill issue to me. I actually think Buzzwole's really good. This is probably, I guarantee its win rate doesn't match this, but I honestly think Buzzwole's really good. I'm going to move it up to A tier. I think people are maybe missing how to play this thing. The thing about some of these all-rounders is they don't do well enough early. Like, Dragonite doesn't do well enough early. Buzzwole's a monster. From, like, the moment the match starts, Buzzwole is a monster. It does have a little bit of an issue late game, but I just think it's so good. I think people are just kind of, yeah. Water Bear. Full disclosure on Water Bear, I don't really love playing Water Bear. It's not my favorite play style. I like Dark Bear a lot better. I can't tell if these buffs were much for Water Bear. I feel like leaving it B+ is fair. In the hands of the most cracked Water Bears out there, I bet they could give you a way more accurate look at what this thing has done. I don't even know if it's moved the needle win rate wise. Let's look. I'm just curious. Like, maybe I'll be like, whoa, and it's gone up 4% or something. Okay, so it's at 49%. Its win rate. It's still Dark Bear. Look at that. 55% win rate on the Wicked Blow build. Secure, right? I mean, Secure is just unbelievable. This is better than what I remember it, but because I think it was like down to like 46 or 47, right? I think in the hands of a great player, you probably feel it. Yeah, I'm not so sure about it. Lucario, gonna stay where it is. Really solid. Feels like a solid all-rounder. B+ seems very fair to me. Clefable staying where it is. Cinder, Duraludon, Dragapult. Yeah, I think these are all good attackers. All good A-pressers. You could maybe move a couple of them up a tier, but they all feel like baseline pretty good. Venusaur, same thing, like pretty good. T-Tar is interesting. I have it in the B tier here. Look, it still is a monster if you get it online. I don't know, man. I know Japan loves it. I'm not really seeing what's so exciting about Tyranitar. And they nerfed it. I'm going to move it back down to the C tier. Machamp, Phalanx, definitely hanging out in B. I think they're solid picks. Phalanx feels completely forgotten by the game, but I do think they are solid picks. Azumarill, yeah, it's so good early, and it does okay late, especially if it has some squishy targets to target with its Unite move. But I think B is very fair. Aegislash, on the other hand, I really like the Aegislash buffs. You never know. Let me read them off, because I'm gonna get them wrong if I just try to remember them, because I know their defenses, right? We have defensive buffs. So its level 1 went from 50 to 80 defense and 35 to 60 special defense. So a pretty sizable increase. in its defenses, right? You never know how like big of an impact something like that's going to make, but you pair that with a cooldown buff on wide guard and a boosted attack max HP damage buff. I honestly think Sword's A, maybe even A plus. I could be underrating Aegislash right now. From the like rounds I've played with it, it feels really, really solid. It already was pretty good and set up a lot of outplays. I think Sword's doing really well. Sable, I'm going to leave where it is. It's great in the hands of a good player. You just never see him. But the one great Sable eye you see will ruin your day. Comfey is Comfey. It's the more broken a Pokemon is, the more broken Comfey is. Crustle and Goodra. Okay, so Crustle I'm going to move up to B+. I could maybe even move it up to A. I do think they over-nerfed it a little while back. Goodra actually has a good build. So this has always, by the way, been the build. Muddy Water has always been the build. Dragon Pulse is a full-on Noob Stomper build. However, that's better now because of what was changed on Goodra. Let me go over the Goodra changes here really quick with you. Because we have like a change to its move speed, slow. We have a, so its move speed slow went from 8% to 10%. Its Muddy Water now debuffs from 10% to 15%. And its Acid Spray throws for a whole second. We finally have a Goodra build that I would say is really solid. I think this is B+, maybe even A. If you're only considering Muddy Water Acid Spray, maybe you could do Power Whip instead of Acid Spray, but that 1 second knockup's really solid. If you're only considering Muddy Water Acid Spray, this might even be a little bit better. We actually have a good Goodra build. It's no longer Midra, it's actually Goodra. Sylveon, I didn't think the changes were that massive. Maybe, to be fair, it's closer to B tier. Really small changes. Cram, I want to move down. I don't know what they were doing with this thing. It's got to be the lowest like win rate in the game. I feel like it's like always in the bottom right now. Yeah, it's 45% on Cram. And look at T-Tar, by the way, 45%. And another Pokemon I'm about to talk about, Charizard. I can't move Charizard out of the Charizard tier for legal issues, but I do have to say that Charizard, oh my gosh. Is this the first tier list that the B tier didn't absolutely devastate me? What's happening? Is the planet healing? No. No. Some things never change. Still got the B tier. Our C tier, the Charizard tier. I think I have to leave Char here. It still carries, and it's got a strong Unite move. I think I think they did over nerf this thing. Mewtwo X. Here's the deal with Mewtwo X. It's in my C tier. That's not fair. It's probably actually B+, maybe even closer to A at times. I just don't like it. I had to, like, before I record this video, I'm like going through all these, and I'm kind of like thinking in my head, like, yeah, where would I put this and all that. Honestly, I had to take a minute and go, I don't know if Mewtwo's that bad. It's just I kind of hate it, and I think it's so boring to play, but I don't think it's that bad. Tyranitar, if it gets fed, it's doing pretty good. But you know what? That win rate's abysmal, and it was recently nerfed. I might put it down in our Decidueye Memorial tier. It's still a raid boss when it gets going, but it's actually kind of perfect. It's kind of perfect, right? Because this thing, when it gets going, it's really, really powerful, and it takes a lot to get going. They actually kind of nailed that setup here, right? Okay. They need to buff Cram just so they can nerf it again at some point. I think they actually still need to buff Sylveon a little bit. Probably each one of its builds could use just a little change, right? And then now it's time to talk about our God tier Pokemon. There are two. We are frickin' Norse around here. We normally don't have two Pokemon in our God tier because we're not frickin' Norse, but we are going to have two. Psyduck can't leave because Psyduck is insane, but Blissey has to join. In fact, I think Blissey is probably the most ridiculous thing in the game right now after its Unite move change. Like, what an absurd change for this Pokemon. You took the best Unite move maybe in the entire game and you buffed it just so you could slightly nerf Helping Hand. Hello? Hello? All right. There you go. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What am I maybe a hair off on? As always, I love hearing the discussion. Just be cool to each other. And maybe someone who says something can win a Pokemon. Maybe a Tinkaton. I don't know. Maybe. I'll see y'all next time.